Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This morning we're reading from, what's the verse number?
Chapter 12, verse 38.
38. Wonderful classes this week. Kaustava Prabhu, Gaur Kumar, my goodness. I'm glad I didn't get that verse yesterday. That was too heavy for me. Intense subject matter. All right. Text 38. One verse, huh?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. See if we can make this out. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Isyat Tvam Vibhuda Sresta Tristyatam Vibhuda Sresta Swamnistam Atmana Stitaha Yanme Sri Rupaya Svairam Mohitu Yangam Mayaya. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O best of the demigods, although you have been amply harassed because of my potency in assuming the form of a woman, you are established in your position. Therefore, may all good fortune be upon you. Although you have been amply harassed by my potency in assuming the form of a woman, you are established in your position. Therefore, may all good fortune be upon you. Srila Prabhupada's purport, His Divine Grace. Since Lord Shiva is the best of the demigods, he is the best of all devotees. Vaishnavam Nita Shambhu. His exemplary character was therefore praised by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gave his benediction by saying, may all good fortune be upon you. When a devotee becomes a little proud, the Supreme Lord sometimes exhibits his supreme power to dissipate the devotee's misunderstanding. After being amply harassed by Lord Vishnu's potency, Lord Shiva resumed his normal, unagitated condition. This is the position of a devotee. A devotee should not be agitated under any circumstances, even in the worst reverses. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Yasmin sito nadukena gurupnapi vichalyate, because he is of his full faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a devotee is never agitated even in the greatest trials. This pridelessness is possible only for the first-class devotee of whom Lord Shambhu is one. Om Gyantimirandhyasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshor Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Let us offer respectful obeisances unto him again and again. We ask anyone listening, everyone listening, please make a prayer to Krishna. Please take a moment, everyone, please make a prayer to Krishna. That what we have to say is only what we've heard from Guru and Shastra, with no distortion and no inappropriate motivation. We're appealing to you all to make that prayer, and certainly Krishna will grant that prayer. We come together to hear from the scripture, to hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We do this as a sacrifice, as an offering to the Lord. Krishna is pleased that we're coming together to try to understand what he has to say, to instruct us, to guide us. It says that in the dense darkness of the age of Kali, that we will get light from this Purana, that the Srimad Bhagavatam will help us. Although we're born in the darkness of ignorance, by the grace of the spiritual master and Shastra, our eyes are opened. And the effect of hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam is described in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shrimdatam Sukata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. Vidyantasto Vavadrani Vidinoti Saritsatam. That the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna works, the Supreme Lord works through the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Supreme Lord, the Paramatma, the Lord in the heart of every living entity, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of one who hears this message. Just like we sit in the sunshine and we get a suntan. It's happening. It's a potency. It's an energy. It's a process. And it works if we do it. So we're encouraged to hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam, hear the glories of the Lord. So we're coming together to glorify Krishna. How wonderful is Krishna? How wonderful is Krishna? How wonderful is Krishna? Even more wonderful than the greatest of all the demigods. Vaishnava Tatashambhu, Lord Shiva is the greatest, powerful personality. Yet, Krishna, his form as Krishna, is more powerful and can bewilder him, right? This can happen to any one of us. So Lord Shiva, Lord Mataji was asking yesterday, well, what's the difference between being bewildered by the external energy or being bewildered and coming under the influence of the internal potency? And as far as we can understand, because Lord Shiva is a devotee, he's situated in his position, it says here in this verse. His position is that he's here to please Krishna. He wants to carry out Krishna's desire. He wants to assist Krishna in what Krishna wants to do. So by being bewildered, Lord Shiva illustrated the power of the material energy and the spiritual energy and the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's different. The two people do the same thing. One person kills someone, or Arjuna kills someone on the battle of Kurukshetra. They're both killing, but because their intention is different, they get a different result. The one whose intention is to do the will of the Lord is uplifted. Right? It's pretty simple. I'm not sure if she accepted that answer or not, but that's as far as I know. And Arjuna is here. Gosh, Arjuna, please accept our obeisance. We're so delighted to see you. Thank you so much. With all the social distancing going on, things have become a little bit, separation is there, and it's a little bit less personal, let us say, sometimes, by all these, the distance between living entities. So, on the subject matter of being bewildered, or being not bewildered, and how any of us can fall into a confused condition, we take note of how Maya works. Sometimes there's a powerful, obvious frontal assault, and sometimes Maya works in a very subtle way. We were stationed in Penang in Malaysia, taking care of a really nice little preaching center there. And one sannyasi came through and he went for a walk. Penang is an island off the coast of Malaysia. So he went for a japa walk in the morning, far away from the temple. And when he came back, he said, I saw this most wonderful thing today. On the south end of the island, there are some gigantic houses. This was used to be a British colony, and even the temple itself was an old British consulate compound. But there's some magnificent houses along the southern coast of the island, along the beaches there. And he said, this one house, it had a huge wall, a seawall, because the house was right on the beach. And the seawall was to protect the house from the ocean. And the wall was like 2.5, 3 feet thick and about 20 feet tall. And he said, and I was walking by there and I saw that this wall had been cracked. And he said, there must have been it's recent, I can see it just must have happened a little while ago. There must have been a typhoon and a storm surge and gigantic waves smashing against this wall and breaking this stone cement wall. And I was thinking, I don't remember having any typhoons here lately. Are you sure? He said, oh, you have to come and see. So we had to go on Boga Run. We had this old, what is it called? Like a truck. And we had to go to this other area to pick up some produce. And so we went in the car and he showed me this wall. And I could see that actually the wall was not broken by smashing gigantic waves, but rather small waves were coming underneath the wall and had eroded the earth underneath the wall. And then by its own weight, the wall fell apart. So Maya works like that sometimes. Sometimes she just gradually lets the air out of your tires, right? I was sleeping in Sankirtan van and where was it? I was out on Long Island one time. We were working out there and I took a little nap in the day and I heard these voices. And these two kids we were parked way in the far end of the parking lot. And these two kids had gone to the right side of the vehicle and were letting the air out of the front tire and the back tire at the same time, right? And they didn't know I was sleeping in the van. I heard their voices and they were laughing. And I looked out and they went, oh, and they ran away. But I mean, they're just letting the air, if you let the air out of two tires, you can't, you don't have two spares. And they're just mischievous, nonsense activity. But if Maya just lets the air out of your tires very little bit at a time, I think Kaustuba Prabhu was saying something about, gradually drifting a little bit, a little late for japa, a little less attention, playing, like Mother Rukmini was saying, Maya says, come play with me. Just a little bit of frivolous, degrading, casual activity. And that's the beginning of going away from Krishna. It works in subtle ways. I joined Krishna consciousness in New Vrindavan. And perhaps people don't know, at New Vrindavan at that time, 1974, there were 3 different temples. It was such an expansive area, and there was like valleys and roads and back road.
Where was it?
West Virginia.
Oh. All right.
And one of the temples was called Bahulaban. And there, a lot of the Matajis, married couples and children lived there. The whole temple compound with different buildings, and Radha Murali, Radha Vrindavan Chandra were there. And then there was another, way up the road, there was another temple called Madhavan, and a lot of the unmarried girls lived there. There was a whole temple there. And then 2 miles back up the mountain, 2 miles on a dirt road with nothing on it, there was a brahmachari ashram. We had 30 brahmacharis living there. And it was very intense, really hardworking crew, very strict. Radhanath Swami was there. And he influenced us all, every single devotee, to be in the temple room at 2:00 in the morning. Mangalarti was at 4:00. And the standard was chant 16 rounds before 4:00. Everyone. And it was like fire japa. People chanting, walking up and down, jumping up and down, standing in a circle with several devotees and with their bead bag. Very, very intense japa. But we all chanted 16 rounds before the 4:00 Mangalarti. Now, if one brahmachari came in 2 minutes late, 2 minutes after 2 in the morning, everybody looked at him like dirt. You dirt bag, you dirty dog, you dog eater, you're breaking formation, you're lowering the standard. We're all in here like a combative force, and we're trying to keep it, this priority. Radhanath Swami used to sit there. He wouldn't move an inch with his eyes closed, and he would sit there and chant 16 rounds, and 16 consecutive, attentive, rounds in the association of other people who were chanting like that. And I'm telling you, it took the paint off the walls. It was very intense. So, and if somebody wasn't comfortable with that standard, they would say, go out. Temple president would say, you go to Bahulaban, the householders down there, and, they have other considerations and children and things like that. So sometimes they're not there. But even down at Bahulaban, I noticed when sometimes I was asked to stay down there, that all the devotees were there before Mangalarti chanting all their rounds together. It was an incredible standard. About 25 years later, I was asked to come and help with the management of Vrindavan. And you've seen the Radhamadan Chandra temple building? You've seen that, Korsharan? Yeah. So I came there, and I was asked to be like a temple commander in charge of that building. There's 40 rooms in that building. Each of the rooms houses 2 devotees. And then there were other devotees across the road. There's the apartments, householder apartments, and up on the hill there were trailers, and going down the ridge there were all kinds of houses and tree houses and teepees and people living all over the place. And so I went there the first day for japa. There were 5 devotees. At that time there were about 700 devotees living at Vrindavan. There were 5 devotees at japa. And the morning program was a little later. Because a lot of the temple programs went later, so they made an adjustment to the time of Mangalarti. There were 5 devotees at japa. And Devamrita Swami was appointed temple president, and I was serving as temple commander at that time. And so he set up this system of counselor, very similar to what Radha Swami does and what you're doing with the community groups, where there would be an older devotee, and there would be a smaller, like a family of 7, 8, 10 devotees in a counselor group. And the counselor would keep track of everyone's attendance. Now in a city temple where everyone goes out and there's programs at night and this and that, and it's harder to do that. But there was morning japa, kirtan, and class. And at noon, everything stopped. Construction, farming, the school, everyone came to the temple again at noon. And there was wonderful kirtan, and then there was about 15 minutes of japa, and then there was a reading or class. And in the evening, there was another program. So in many of these Christian monastic communities, they have like that. They have several programs a day, and everyone comes, right? So the counselors would keep attendance. And actually, we had a time clock. You know how you have a punch clock where you have your card and you punch in what time you arrive for japa? It was a time clock. And every week, all the counselors report to me all their devotees' attendance, whether they're there for japa, whether they're there for kirtan, whether they're there for class, whether they're there for the noon program, whether they're there for the evening program. Every devotee accountable, and an amazing upgrade when I was shifted from that service. I remember that there were 90 devotees at japa. There were, concessions for people who lived a little bit at a distance or were traveling on Sankirtan and weren't there that day, or were, had a preaching program at night. But it's called an excused absence. So they were accountable to their counselor for whether or not they had an attendance or whether they had a good reason not to be attending. And it was really interesting. It was loving care. It wasn't onerous, control or some kind of imposition. People were grateful to have the shelter of the spiritual master and the devotees. And we are encouraged to take full shelter of the spiritual master's instruction and the association of devotees to maintain a certain quality of sadhana, and certainly our devotional service is going on. But I was recently speaking to one of my godbrothers, an older godbrother, who's a wonderful, wonderful devotee, and wonderful preacher. And somehow in the course of the conversation, it just came out. I said, "How are your rounds?" Because I was a little bit, still had some rounds from the day before. And I was going to just confess the fact that I got a little bit behind, Prabhupada says, you don't chant 16 rounds, the next day make it up. I said, how many rounds? He said, Prabhu, no one has ever asked me that. And he said, I'm actually 3 or 4 days behind in my rounds. I've been very, very busy, a lot of service, a lot of, unregulated and, and I was shocked. He said, thank you so much for asking me. He said, no one, and I've been in the movement like 35 years. He said, no one has ever asked me, how are your rounds? And Maya can slip in, and where's she going to attack? She's going to start with those japa. She's going to start with that kirtan attendance. She's going to let the air out of your tires a little bit here and there, maybe not smack in the face, but gently and subtle ways undermine your strength, the source of your strength. And we have to be very careful that she doesn't do that, because she's tricky and powerful. And we always quote that Devananda Pandit says, before you get up in the morning, Maya already got up, took her shower, and she chanted all her rounds, and she's waiting for you, right? She doesn't take a day off. She doesn't have a coffee break. She's on it. She's going to somehow or other look for that little, like underneath that big seawall, erode the support and allow your strength to be diminished. So it's very dangerous. Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he tells us, every day we have to get up and join this movement. Every day, take that cold shower. Every day, get to the temple room on time. It's getting a little chilly now. When I hit that cold shower in the morning, I'm like, whoa, Krishna. But that is our, in the intensity of crying out to Krishna. There is the, like the Hasidic Jewish people say, bake your bread with burning tears. Cry out to the Lord. It says like a small child, like a helpless child. We're chanting our japa. And we're trying like that. I don't know, maybe nobody there remembers Kevala Bhakti. Very funny devotee. He left his body about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, but he was there at the Bhakti Center, and he had read that portion of the Shastra where it says that unless you're crying, unless tears are coming to the eyes, then there is a steel-framed heart. You've heard that before? Right? So he determined that he was going to shed at least one tear during his japa in the morning. And he was driving us crazy in the temple room. He was, Hare Krishna, trying to squeeze out a tear, Finally, we had him go chant his rounds on the roof. And he was up there trying to get himself to cry on the roof. And 6 policemen came. They came up the stairs of the building next door and climbed over the roof. They thought somebody was getting killed up there. Kevala was screaming and yelling with his japa. Finally, we had to put him in the walk-in cooler downstairs to chant his rounds. This is so crazy, but the intensity of our crying out is very important. Krishna, we mean it. We really want to serve you, and we really want to be protected. The protection is there. It's available if we take it, if we want it. And Maya seeps in subtle ways. We were listening to Shruti Kirti last night. Everyone knows Shruti Kirti, right? Prabhupada's servant. You probably heard this before. And he was telling us, he had been, at that point, he had been Prabhupada's servant for about 8 months. You heard this story? Daniel? No? Maybe Arjun heard. And he said, they would travel to here, to there, to there. And when they could be coming off the plane, the devotees at wherever they landed, this was like 1975 maybe. And at every place they landed, there would be like hundreds and hundreds of devotees jumping in the air, crying out in the kirtan to welcome Prabhupada at the airport, throwing themselves on the ground, hundreds of people crying, And he said, I'm walking behind Prabhupada and I'm just carrying the bags. And at that point, I had like, Maya kind of seeped into me too. I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not feeling anything. And he said, in the light of coming off the plane and seeing all these devotees weeping and crying and in complete ecstatic joy, to see Srila Prabhupada having that separation. He said, I didn't feel that separation because I was with Prabhupada 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months and months and months. And he said, I was just feeling dry. And he said, so then later that day, he was giving Prabhupada his massage. And he confessed to Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, I'm not feeling anything. I'm just completely dried up. And he expected Prabhupada to console him or to preach to him. And Prabhupada didn't say anything. And so the massage went on for another half an hour. And then he had to go and cook Prabhupada's lunch. And Prabhupada didn't say anything. And then he prepared the lunch and he brought it in to Srila Prabhupada's room. And hours had gone by without Prabhupada saying anything. And he was feeling even worse. He said, I was in such terrible maya. I was ready to jump out the window. I was just finished. I told Prabhupada, I don't feel any enthusiasm. I don't feel any joy. I don't feel any bliss. I don't feel any ecstasy. And I'm just, like a dried up old raisin, nothing, dust, nothing. And he was like, he said, my mind was torn to pieces. Tell them to be quiet, okay. My mind was torn up by this feeling. And then Prabhupada didn't say anything for so long. And then he said, at one point, Prabhupada said to me, just do your service. If you're asking for bliss, if you're asking for ecstasy, that's not what we're after. Because Krishna will give different results and different experiences. Matra sparshas tu kamtena shitosha shuka dukkha daha. Right? The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, heat and cold, fame and infamy will come and go like the winter and summer seasons. One must tolerate them without being disturbed. What's not disturbed? The service. Just go on in your service. He said that was his realization. Just go on in your. Sometimes people will praise you. Sometimes they'll laugh at you. Sometimes they'll criticize you. Sometimes they'll ignore you. And under any circumstances, if you have a relationship with your spiritual master where you actually ask, how can I serve you? And the spiritual master gives you your prescribed duty, then that voice will outshout all the, temptations and obstacles and excuses that would be put forward by the mind and senses. Just do your service. Simple, clear understanding. This is my duty. This is what I do day after day. And as an offering to Krishna, right? Tatenu kampang shushamikshimano. You know that verse, right? Tatenu kampang shushamikshimano. It says a devotee, even he sees reverses, he goes on with his service. Ahetuki apatiyata, unceasing, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna is the only thing that will satisfy the self. Unceasing, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna. And service means you're serving someone. In this case, Sri Kirti Prabhu was directly serving Srila Prabhupada, but in every devotee circumstance, there's someone we're assisting. There's someone we're inspired by. There's someone who we're offering our activity to and asking them, what would you like me to do? How do you want me to do it? Is this pleasing? Because love means there's a person who is loving and a beloved. I remember when I was in college, I had a page in the beginning of one of my notebooks where I would rate my teachers. And I would just write down, this person is so boring that he's even boring himself. It's amazing that he's staying awake in class. He just opens the book and reads through every class, and you have 3 classes a week for months, and you're hour after hour after hour. And I was thinking this one class, Dr. Schweitzer, it was a history class. I had no eye contact with him for about 2.5 months. He never looked at me or anyone. He had no idea how many people were sleeping in his class. He didn't care. It was ridiculous, you know? And at one point, I had a seat in the front on the right side. I just stood up and did a little hula dance during class while he was talking. He didn't even notice. And the whole class burst out laughing, and I sat down before he looked up. But at least he looked up. I was thinking, what's wrong with this person, you know? Other people, I said, no, this person, he knows what he's talking about. And he's enthusiastic about it. He can't wait to tell people what he has to say. You know, I would make these little comments about the teachers, you know. And I noticed sometimes even in a devotee class, somebody may be quoting him so many shlokas and going on and on. And I don't feel any joy. I don't feel any, you know, enthusiasm. I don't feel any contact with that person, especially like now we have these Zoom classes, you know, you can hardly see the faces of the people in the class. And is there reciprocal, you know, interaction? But a lot of times as soon as somebody says, they start to tell some story about that, Prabhupada says, example is higher than precept. You may have this academic knowledge when you say, you know, when I was a kid, you know, Vaisheshika Prabhu was telling us about he won a skipping, he didn't win this, he was in a skipping contest when he was about 6 or 7 years old. Do you ever hear him tell that? Did you hear that? Never? Vaisheshika, you know Vaisheshika. He said, and it was a skipping race, and I was skipping and I fell down, and I came in like last or 5th or something like that. And he said, everyone in the race got a little trophy. And I was so happy to have that trophy. You know, I was in the skipping race, you know. He said with the attitude of the person sometimes doesn't correlate to what they achieved. Or he gave the example, he was watching one Olympic, it was a teenage Olympic event. And there was the person who won the gold medal standing on the highest platform. And then there was a person who won the bronze medal, which is third place. And that guy was like, yay, I did it. I won. And he said the person on the highest pedestal was looking at this other guy who was so enthusiastic about his bronze medal, as if he was like envying him, you know. So, you know, we have a choice of how we respond to what Krishna sends. And here, Lord Shiva, he is totally humiliated. You know, his whole stature as being a tapasvi and a person who's unattached and uninfluenced by any kind of sensual temptation. And then he gets completely humiliated in front of his wife, in front of the sages, in front of everyone. And yet, the verse says that he maintained his position. Under any circumstance, I'm Krishna's servant. I'm satisfied to go on in devotional service, even if reverses come. So we invite questions, comments, experiences, angles of vision, facial expressions. Arjuna always has these interesting facial expressions. Any questions or comments, please?
Thank you, Adi Purusha, for your amazing wisdom from years of service. I really like the point, like when you mentioned that how protection of Krishna is always available. We have to choose it. So it's a very important point. Like Krishna is always available for giving us protection, inspiration, and spiritual strength. And here also we see how Lord Shiva is like eager to see, even if it is like he's wanting to see Mohini Murthy, still he is eager to see Krishna, and he is eager to witness the pastime of Krishna. And I was just thinking how, like, why the demigods get bewildered, did not get bewildered, but Lord Shiva gets bewildered. Like, I could not understand, like, the same Lord, how is that they were like, were they are not as advanced as Lord Shiva, and still he gets bewildered. So is it like Krishna wanting him to bewilder, or what is the kind of lessons that we can see from?
Krishna loves us, and Krishna
Hmm.
is teaching us to come away from the material paradigm. Me. What do I like? What do I don't like? To get off the mental platform. What's easy? What's difficult? What's easy? What I like? What I don't like? It's a platform of love. Krishna loves us, and he's helping us. He's teaching us. He's testing us. Don't think that you will not be tested today. Krishna will test you. Maya's service is to test you. You know, I had many things that happened yesterday where I said to myself, I was preaching, calm down, just calm down. Okay, let's just keep trying. This seems like a terrific, difficulty. The setbacks and the obstacles and the problems and the breakdowns. And, he had an electrical problem in the kitchen, and someone was supposed to come and fix it, and then they didn't show up. And then they said they'd be 2 hours later, and then they didn't show up. And then this other one came, and we had this like explosion electrical thing, and Priya, what's his name? Priya Saka. You know him? Very
Yeah.
nice movie. He came and
He's in the class.
What?
He's listening now.
Oh, really? We want to thank him for his sincere. He came right away, and even when he was working, there was his first attempt to fix it resulted in another short, and it blew out the circuit breaker. We had to start all over again, but he persevered, and I had so many interruptions to what the resting program is that day. I already had 5 or 6 things happen, and phone calls and this and that, and then then I was waiting to get this fixed, and I was just preaching to myself. Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, "My dear mind, thou art not a Vaishnava," right? It's not. There's no problem except my own uncontrolled mind. That's what Prahlad Maharaj says to his father. My dear father, you're controlling the whole universe, but your only enemy is your own uncontrolled mind. So I was watching this storm going on in my mind. I was really tired, and the lights, there's no lights in the kitchen. How can we cook and everything? But Priya Saka Prabhu saved us. But Krishna tested us, and he's going to test us beyond the previous test, right? The intensity of the test, the duration of the test will be more, and we're becoming stronger and stronger, resisting greater and greater externally provocative situations. And like Shruti Kirti was telling us, Prabhupada told him, just go on with your service. You're entitled to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. The tendency is to not have duty, to stay at a sufficient distance from the spiritual master or the spiritual master's representative so that they don't ask us to do anything. Or they don't let them ask you to do something you don't want to do.
Sitting in the back of class.
What is it?
Like sitting in the back of class, hoping you won't be called.
Yeah, Dr. Allen saying that sometimes a student will sit in the back of the class hoping he's not going to be called upon. So that, but you can't hide from Krishna. Gently, persistently, he will complete the good work he's begun in you. He's helping us. He's helping us. If there aren't these tests, we'll never become stronger. We'll never learn and grow. So he asked a good question. If Krishna loves us, Krishna's testing us. And we're grateful for these learning experiences, right? Or we lament them.
Hi Krishna. Anybody else has a comment or a question? You're free to. You can unmute yourself and.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the class. It was really wonderful. I just was so appreciating the story about just do. And it makes me think, I remember years ago, I heard about how Mother Teresa, right at like the height of her becoming a thing, she had a real lack of faith. I remember reading, she used to say she heard God every day and then all of a sudden the voice was gone. But she just knew to kept doing. She had faith in the process and she just kept doing. And I always think of that. And so that's such a beautiful point. And I think it's like, yeah, because Jiwa often says that doing duties is the first step, because then you realize there's something higher than yourself and you take yourself out of the way. So I really appreciate that point so much. Thank you.
Yeah, it comes from the St. John of the Cross. He calls it the dark night of the soul. When you don't see, it's like a big wall in front of you reaching up to the stars. He said, you don't see any light coming over, and you just, even though you've gone so far in devotional service, you practically are ready to lose hope. But we must endure. We must patiently go on doing our prescribed duty. Therefore, just like Arjuna, at one point he said, now friendly talks are over. Now I'm a disciple. Now I am surrendered to you. Tell me what you want me to do. And we all have that Kurukshetra moment in our life with our spiritual master. When we, oh, Haribol, yeah, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? Yeah. And he gives you his approval, his encouragement. But when you get to the point where you say, listen, I want your instruction, not just your permission, not just your blessings, but okay, I'm pulling out all the stops here. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? You know, and there are things that each of us has that we don't want to give up. Like Abraham with his only son. We all have our only son. We'll do anything but that. I'll go anywhere but there. I'll work with anyone but that devotee, you know. And so Krishna will squeeze out the last drop of selfishness and, you know, because love wants to give all. Love wants to give all, right? We're on the love path because that's who we really are. And it's nothing artificial, but gently, but steadily and persistently, Krishna will help us to move forward to the point where we don't want anything else but to please the Lord. The gopis are ready to go to hell. They said, wait a minute, nobody would give us the dust from their feet to put on Krishna's head. They said, we don't care if we go to hell. Narayana, Parasave, Nakutashin, Bibidi, Sparka, Pavarga, Narkesh. A devotee doesn't care if he goes to heaven or hell. Ah! Go to hell? Okay, I'll go there. Prabhupada went to hell, New York. It's hell. Right? He went to New York. I was with Devamrita Swami in New Zealand, which is like a heavenly planet. We had this amazing preaching program going there with Bhakti Center, and Chandrasekhar Maharaj was there with us. And then I got the call to come to New York. Well, I'm from New York. And I was like, New York? Oh, no, not New York. Oh, no. You know, passionate, expensive,
Babylon.
dirty, yeah, Babylon. Oh, they gave me the plane ticket. I got on the plane and I came here. And it was unbelievable. But, you know, we're here. And you get to the point, we're homeless, which means we're at home anywhere. You know, I was stationed in Taiwan or Malaysia. People say, do you like it here? And I say, theoretically, I'm satisfied wherever my spiritual master asks me to go. That is my home. And you, when somebody asks you, where do you live? Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
Somebody says, where do you live? You should say, Kirtan. What's your address? Kirtan. Right? I can't go out of time now. Is it true? That way you're. Any other
Adi,
questions?
we have 1 minute before darshan. I just thank you so much, Adi Prabhu. Your entire story is extremely inspiring. I just want to say that it makes me, it's inspiring for me just to hear the vigor and the amount of discipline in the sadhana that your whole generation had that. And I am not even to the level anywhere of the devotees in on this call, but it's very inspiring and the amount of just discipline in the sadhana. So thank you for sharing.
For Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Adi Purusha.
Just keep doing your service, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
No problem.